We don't try, Father, to even fathom or imagine what it would be like if we try to depend solely on our own ability. We try to depend wholly and completely on our intelligence, Father. Thank you that you have allowed us to see, to know, to understand clearly, be able to comprehend this privilege that's being blessed to us. So, Father, we thank you that you love us so absolutely very much that you decided to allow the reality of the truth of your word to work in our lives, to work in our hearts, to cause us, Father, to understand that and understand that the Holy Spirit, which reveals to us meaning, gives us the clarity to be able to understand what your purpose, what your plan is, what your will is, what your desire is for our lives. Thank you, Father, that your word is alive. It is quick and powerful. It is sharper than a two-edged sword, dividing sun, soul, spirit, marrow, and the joints of the bones, discerns the thoughts and intents of our heart. It is your word, Father, that created everything. Your word that has come into this planet, into this world, and caused us to realize who you are. Thank you for communicating with us, Father. You loved us with an everlasting love. We appreciate the reality that we have with the Son for us. Thank you, Father, that you've chosen us, selected us, and allowed us this privilege and opportunity that you bestowed love upon us, allow us to know your sons and daughters. Father, we thank you for your word, that your word is a lamp to our feet, it is a light to our path. Thank you, Father, that we are here, and we thank you that your word is what strengthens us, that your word is what causes us to come into the fullness of the reality of your will, your purpose. So, Father, we submit wholly to you, completely to your word. Thank you for what your word is doing in our hearts. Thank you for what your word is doing in our lives. Thank you for what your word is causing us to understand, causing us to see. And thank you, Father, for the empowerment, for the strength, and the grace to not only be hearers of the word, but to be make that, Father, as a quality decision. We love you with everything. And sure that you just allow this moment to be all that you designed for it to be. In Yeshua's name. So we're thankful and grateful to the Father, all that He is and all that He does. Thank you for all of you who happen to be joining us here on our live feed, whatever medium by which you are joining us. We're missing a few things this morning. I'm missing a few this morning. Uh, we're thankful to the Father for allowing us to be in His presence, to be a part of His beloved family, and for why and for the hows of what He does. I want to say something that really has been, I guess you'd say, a greater clarity and a greater reality for me recently. Something that I have found myself reminding myself of, and something that I believe is important for us to clearly understand and see and even receive. Put it that way. And that is that the Father knew what He was doing, and He allowed us to be born in this time We have been born, we've been brought into the earth for such a time as this. My subject matter is very, what would seem to be very basic. Uh, but the truth of the matter is you still have to be able to be willing and receptive enough to hear what the Father says and to say what He says when He says, because what He says is always a word in season. And when we do what He says, just hear what He has to say, the benefits that we experience and see in our lives are beyond anything that we could ever attempt to create on our own. I know we like to be in some ways dependent on ourselves, but the truth of the matter is that truly without Him, our life cannot be maximized of the reality of what He's intended for. Joshua chapter 1 is where I'm going to go this morning. Subject matter is real simple. But it's something that I've become aware of for one reason or another, that many of us in this moment right now are needing. And, it was just these simple words that were stirred through my heart as I was preparing to approach what we would share today. And those words came to me, two words, simple. Be encouraged. That's real simple, two words that were spoken in my heart. So I want to really explore what that meant. It's so interesting how the Father will take that thing that is so seemingly elementary and simple, but then reveal to you something that is greater beyond your own comprehension, your own understanding. So much so to the reality that fully that it really is Him. That it's revealing the way He's revealing what He's doing and how He is revealing. And so let's look at Joshua chapter 1. I want you to bring your attention to verse number 6. Now, to set up the reality of the backdrop, we're familiar with the book of Joshua. Joshua is how you pronounce that properly in Hebrew. But we're familiar with what happened, how Joshua got to the point to where he became the leader of the Israelites. And in him becoming the leader of the Israelites, after the death and the passing of Moshe, he became responsible for leading the children of Israel into the promised land, for them to actually possess it. It was occupied at the moment by individuals, because I want you to understand the Bible just how it does track history. It was actually the land of Canaan, or what we would know from the King James Scripture as Canaan. And so it was the land of Canaan, the land of Canaan. And in the midst of approaching the land of Canaan, land of Canaan, Israel was not confiscating or taking something that did not already truly belong. It was something that the Father had promised, and there were people who were occupying it. And if you want to say it, they were occupying it illegally. They were illegal occupants. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. Those illegal occupants were allowed to cultivate the land. They were allowed to grow produce. They were allowed to raise cattle. They were allowed to establish homesteads, so that a promise that the Father had given to the people, his people, was, because you got to look at how things work. The Father already knew before the very foundation of the world that he was, before the very foundation of everything, that it was his intention for his people, Israel, to occupy the land that these giants and other people who were occupying the land, we already know how the giants came. But he knew what his purpose and what his plan was. And we look at the reality of Israel going into captivity in the land of Egypt. They're in there. Joseph lets them know before he passes on. He lets them know that they're going to, because the Father revealed to him, he lets them know what's going to happen. And Joseph tells them, he says, there's going to come a point in time when you guys are going to leave. And when you leave in Egypt, don't leave my remains. Take my bones with you when you leave Egypt. Leave this captivity. And so we know that it fulfilled. There was a Pharaoh who came to power. Okay? Not that he didn't know Joseph, but there's a Pharaoh who came to power who by the original language did not recognize, did not acknowledge he was intentional. That he did not recognize or acknowledge because it's impossible for you to come to a place of being Pharaoh and not know or recognize or realize the historical contribution of Safnath-Paneah, as receiving Pharaoh would have called it. And so the reality is that yes, he knew who Joseph was. He was intimidated by the growth and the productivity of Israel because Israel had been given the opportunity to occupy actually the most prosperous piece of land in Egypt, the Egypt area, which is called the land of Goshen. And they had cultivated and developed it. He became intimidated. That Pharaoh became intimidated by it. So he decided not to acknowledge the contribution of this Israelite, this Hebrew Joseph, and began to launch a campaign to enslave and to cripple the productivity of the people. The Father allowed it. And in the process of the Father allowing it, of course, there was prophetic utterance that came forth that they were going to be in captivity, but that what was going to happen is the deliverer was going to come. He was going to be raised up in sort of a Messiah typology. Moses being sort of a typology of a Messiah, not being the Messiah, not being a Messiah, but operating in a pattern, a messianic pattern of the people going through this bondage captivity and then coming out on the other side, delivering them, bringing them out, and stuff like that. A picture of the shoe. And so, as the people of Israel, because the Father knew what his purpose and his plan was, because we know that preceding all of this, there was a fellow by the name of Abraham. Okay, and here's what the Father had told him. Okay, before these other people occupied the land, the Father told him, look, okay, and he told him, I'm going to take you to a place. He gave him a promise, and the promise that he gave him was the reality. The Father told Abraham, right? He let him know what his plan would be. So the Father had this plan in place the whole entire time. And look at this. The entire time that the Israelites were in the captivity and in the bondage of Egypt and experiencing all that they were experiencing, the other people who were the illegal occupants of the territory that they were going to go and possess had been cultivating and developing and building and establishing habitation in the land that Israel will later occupy. Israel is experiencing turmoil. Israel is experiencing trouble. Israel is experiencing pain. Israel is being mistreated, mishandled unfairly. But the Father knew that the time would come that he was going to deliver them, and he knew that he was going to have them to settle in the land. And the whole time they were experiencing trouble, they were experiencing waiting on the deliverance and waiting on their freedom. The Father had allowed, that's why he said, he used the terminology, okay, a land flowing with milk and honey. But we know he wasn't literally talking about milk and honey in that sense. Now, milk and honey was there, but what he was letting them know that they were actually going to be going to a fertile and a fruitful land. And then he promised them, you're going to live in houses that you didn't build, eat from vineyards that you didn't plant, okay? Drink from wells that you did not dig. So he gave those illegal occupants of the territory, he gave them the job and the task of cultivating the property that Israel would later occupy. Israel was able to enter into something that had already been put in place for them by those illegal occupants. And when the time came for those occupants to be exited or to exit that land, when it was a fullness of time came, the Father allowed for it to take place, and even all of the wealth that Egypt had begun to amass upon the backs of the Israelites, the whole time the whole time Egypt was growing and developing an economy, right, that would at the time of deliverance later be transferred to Israel. Now, they were in the oppressive regime of the Egyptians for over 400 years. Cried out for a deliverer, cried out to be free. It's one of the reasons why I don't really fully comprehend. Now I understand the mentality of what was going on, but why it's so, I mean, I guess reading it, looking at it, not experiencing it, maybe that's some different things. But here is Israel who cried out for generations to be free, cried out for generations to be delivered from the captivity of Egypt, who only when they finally experienced, after over 400 some years of slavery, when they finally experienced the freedom and deliverance that they so sought for and so cried out for, this same group of people, after being delivered, cried out to go back to something that they had prayed and cried and believed to be free from for over 400 years. That's not really the reality of the lesson, but at the time that we come up to, Israel had gone through this thing, and the Father was now giving instructions to Joshua, and he was telling him, just like I was with Moses, I'm going to be with you. But I got to give you some instructions, because these instructions are going to serve you well when you go into the land, because you have the responsibility, Joshua, you got a different responsibility than Moses had. Moses had the responsibility of getting them out of Egypt and getting them to the promised land. You have the responsibility of leading them into the promised land to actually possess it. You have that responsibility. And so here, Israel was coming upon a time where they were actually now getting ready, preparations were being made for them to finally go in and possess this land flowing with milk and honey. So the Father speaks to Joshua and tells him that there are some things that you're going to have to understand. First of all, Moses is gone. I need you to get up, and I need you to lead this people. I need you to lead them to the promised land. So in verse 6, he picks up and he's talking all these different things like that. And he told them, I'm not going to ever leave you. You're not going to ever be by yourself. I'm going to be with you. But in verse 6, he picks up and he uses this terminology. Be strong and be bold. Look, for you will cause this people to inherit the land I swore to their fathers I would give them. Only be strong and very bold. I believe your King James Bible uses some terminology along be strong and of a good courage. Okay? He says, only be strong, and very bold in watch, wait a minute. Don't miss this. Be strong and listen, look at what he tells him to direct his boldness. Be strong and very bold in taking care to follow all the Torah which Moses, my servant, ordered you to follow. Do not turn from it either to the right or to the left. Watch. Then you will succeed wherever you go. Yes, keep this book of the Torah on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you will take care to act according to everything written in it. Watch this. He says, then your undertakings will prosper and you will succeed. He says, haven't I ordered you? Be strong and be bold. So don't be afraid or downhearted, because the Most High your Elohim, or Adonai your God, is with you wherever you go. Now there are some things that we got to really take a look at, and I'm going to get into some of that wording and some of that language here just in a moment. But there's some things you really got to take a look at here. And I think I've talked before in one other lesson prior to this about how the word encourage means to repair. I'm mentioning that and going a little bit further into that just a little bit here. But he says to him, and he repeats this to him at more than one time. He says, I want you to be strong, to be bold. Be strong, be bold. Okay? He basically was saying the same thing that I'm saying today when I'm talking to us to say, be encouraged. The Hebrew word is the word or the statement here, be strong, be bold, is chazak ba ma'at. Be strong, be bold. Strong, be bold. Take courage, be encouraged. That is what he is saying to Joshua. Now, why is he saying this to Joshua? Joshua is going to have the responsibility. And when we read through the book of Joshua, when we read through the book of Joshua, what we find, because what you're going to understand about what took place is, by the time we've gotten to the book of Joshua, we've gone through Genesis, we're going through all these different things, right? And one of the things that happened in the book of Numbers chapter 13, was 13-14, was the Israelites had finally got to the promised land. And when they got to I should say, on the outskirts of the promised land, spies had been sent into the promised land to scout it out. Went into the promised land, went over there, said, the whole thing about grasshoppers. The people started crying out, bellyache and all that. So the Father did, he said, this mentality cannot go into the promised land. So Israel was purged. And in the process of Israel being purged, there was these two people who came back out of 12. They had a positive report. Joshua was one of those people. The other fellow's name was Caleb. And do you know what I found out when I looked at the word Caleb? The word Caleb is actually the Hebrew word for bold. The same word. But then the word bold in Hebrew means done with all heart. It is done. And whatever is done, it is done with all heart. So when you look at the scriptural text, there is one specific particular thing that we are told to do with all of our heart. And that particular thing is to do what? Love the Lord your God with what? All your heart. All heart and soul, all your mind, love your neighbor, you love yourself, so on and so forth. So the Father's definition, as he reveals it to us through his originality of his language, is he's allowing us to see when it talks about the righteous being as bold as a lion. It is important for us to realize that the terminology that the world uses, or the terminology that secular world uses for boldness, is not the same as the terminology that the Father uses for boldness. When he's talking about being bold, and you just read it here, he says, when do you need to be bold? Be bold. He says, verse number 7, only be strong and very bold in taking care to follow all the Torah which Moses, my servant, ordered you to follow. Do not turn from it either to the right or to the left. Then you will succeed wherever you go. Boldness, as the Father has designed. So what I want you to do is I want you to take all your heart, and I want you to put all of your heart into doing what I have instructed you to do through my Torah, through Moses. What I want you to do is I want you to put all of your heart into making the decision to obey me. That's what I want you to do. Because here's the reality, y'all. Contrary to popular opinion, secular, worldly, popular opinion, okay? Obedience to the will of the Father, okay, is not something that makes you weak. It takes courage to obey the will of the Father. Knowing that the response, or knowing that the perspective of those who observe your obedience to the Father is sometimes, well, not sometimes, but quite often contrary to what the purpose and the plan and the will of the Father is for you. So boldness is what the Father is intending for us to see and realize is what we are to use put all of our heart into obeying what he said to do. Because he said, if you put all of your heart into obeying what I tell you to do, this is what it means. I'm going to be with you. And when I'm with you, here's reality, y'all. I'm telling you. There's people, you can see it sometimes even in natural, okay? I'm going to use the example. I'm not using that, but I'm going to use the example of Lion King, okay? Anyway, I'm going to use the example of Lion King. Remember the little scene in Lion King where Simba had ventured out beyond the light, where he was supposed to go out into the place where all the hyenas and all of that was. And then you remember when they got cornered by the hyenas, and you remember how Simba, little bitty thing, started trying to growl, to intimidate the hyenas, and they were laughing, at him. Do it again, do it again. And when he did it again, then the next time he opened up his little mouth to try to growl, it sounded a lot different than the first time that he growled. Well, we know or realize in the movie that growl was not coming from Simba. Simba was opening his mouth to growl again, the little weak growl, but the growl that they heard that intimidated them was the growl that came from Mufasa. Yeah, now, Simba was, kind of crazy, but he kind of believed, overconfident, believed that he was gonna somehow be able to intimidate them. But there was a greater degree of confidence when Simba realized that he was in trouble, when he realized his dad was with him. greater degree of confidence. Here's the reality. If we only have ourselves to be the source of our confidence, we'll always fall short. Watch this. The end of you being the source of your own confidence is discouragement. Because at some point, what you have the ability to do to give yourself encouragement, to be your own fortitude. Now, yeah, watch this. You know what? Scripture says, and I think first Samuel chapter 30, when David was dealing with Ziklag, that he encouraged himself. No. He encouraged himself in the Lord his God. That's different. It wasn't, David was not the source of his own encouragement. He had been seeking the Father. What happened? You know, we've been violated. Right? These people have come. We've been off in battle. We come back. The town has been burned. The children have been taken into captivity. The women have been taken into captivity. What did David do? The men that were with him are now, his comrades are now attacking him. Said, if we hadn't been with you, we wouldn't have to be going through this. Now our wives and our children in captivity, we've been out in battle with you, and now we come back home, and now our home has been violated, and now we don't know where our wives and children are. It's your fault, David. So David stole away, asked for the ephod. He stole away, went and sought the Father. Y'all know that. Come on, y'all. We know David's nature. For the most part, David was a man of war. That's why he couldn't build a temple. And David had a little thing where David liked fighting. It's a reality, right? So here was David. David stopped, said, go give me the ephod. And look at the question he asked the Father. He said, shall I pursue? Shall I go after them? And then the Father, said, yeah, pursue. And you have, told him he was going to be successful in the campaign. But the reality is that David understood the necessity that he had to go back and wait and depend on what the Father, tell me how to do it. Tell me when to do it. Not only give me what to do, give me the strategy, give me the how. Tell me what to do. And he sought the Father, and the Father did it. And because he sought the Father, and we see that paradigm almost continually throughout what the scripture reveals, especially in the book of Proverbs chapter 3, right? In all your ways acknowledge him. To the right path of before that, he says, to be careful not to lean to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, he will direct you back. So here's the reality. The reality is that when we put all of our heart into doing what the Father says to do, when we put all of our heart into obeying what the Father is telling us, when we put all of our heart into following his will, following his heart, following his command, there is a strengthening, there is a boldness, there is a confidence that does not come from us, that sustains us through everything that we must face. The Father knew everything Joshua was going to encounter when they went into the promised land. He knew every battle that Joshua was going to have to fight. So he said, man, what I need you to do is I need you to make up your mind right now that you're going to obey me no matter what. See, you got to learn this lesson. I need you, Joshua, obey me no matter what. Joshua, do what I'm telling you to do. Follow what I commanded you to do in my Torah, through my servant Moses. You need to put all of your heart into that. Watch this, y'all. So that if all of my heart is put into obeying what the Father says to do, then it leaves no room for anything else to come into my heart to weaken it. Wow. So he says, this is what I need you to do, Joshua. Only be bold and So only be strong and very bold in taking care to follow all the Torah which Moses my servant ordered you to follow, not turn from it, either to the right or to the left. Then you will succeed wherever. Then you will succeed wherever you go. Now, we already know. You read the book of Joshua, right? You know what happened. They had a successful campaign when they got to Jericho. One of the most fortified cities of the time. Big, thick walls that surrounded the city. But guess what? The Father did not give Joshua the okay, or he did not give him the instructions. Just go in there, run through there, and bum rush him. Wait for the opportunity for the door, run there, but he could have told him to do that. What did he do? He gave him a strange instruction saying, get the get the people, have them to walk around the city, right? Have them do it. They had to do it over a series of days. Then on the last day, they had to do it 7 times. Walk around the city. Really? What is that? We came to occupy the territory. We came to possess the land. What do you mean? Walk around the walls. Spend all these days walking around the building and walking around the city. But then on the last day, you want us to walk around the city 7 times? And then you didn't say pull out a sword. You didn't say pull out a spear. You didn't say pull out a bow. What you said was on the 7th time, on the 7th day, blow the shofar. Because it's a reality. Joshua and the armies of Israel, as the Father had been developing in their own power and their own strength, could not bring down the walls of Jericho. The Father knew how fortified Jericho was. He knew what had been established in Jericho. He knew what had been built up. He knew the stronghold that Jericho was. But he also knew what it would take to bring it down. And when they did what the Father told them to do, all of the walls of Jericho fell except one part. You know what that part was? That was the part where Rahab was. She was protected by the Father. But all the walls fell. Everything crumbled. And then they had success. But then they got to a smaller city. Ai. Smaller city. No fortification. No barrier. No stronghold barrier that was holding them back. They got to that city, little city, that they should have easily been able to conquer. No big army. Should have easily been able to conquer. And what happened? They got whipped. And the Father revealed to Joshua, this is why you got whipped, because you got sin in the camp. Because somebody decided that they would do something outside of what I had instructed y'all to do. So you know what, Joshua, what you gotta do? You gotta eliminate that. Get him, get all of his family, stone them. Deal with it. The Father was playing. In this campaign, what you are having to deal with, what you happen to face, you're only going to be able to survive it. You're only going to be able to have success. And we're going to talk about the word survive in a minute. You're only going to be able to survive. You're only going to be able to have success through your obedience to me. Ooh, this is something I have learned over the course of my life. I have learned over the course of my life because and through the scripture text, book of Proverbs, I believe it's in the book of Proverbs, but it talks about a prudent man, wise man, and it talks about being that basically wisdom or operating or functioning wisdom, or to have that type of fortitude strength of wisdom is better than someone through brute strength, basically, I'm paraphrasing, can go and conquer the city. You know, operating, exercising, functioning through wisdom, that Father's wisdom is better than that. He makes it very clear to us over and 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 over again that our obedience to him. Watch this. This is why staying away from disobedience is so important, because disobedience continually weakens you. And the thing is, you don't even realize that the strength is leaving you. You don't even realize it. The strength is leaving you. And sometimes you don't even realize strength is leaving you until it's too late. It becomes important for us to understand the nature of why the Father said, Josh, you got a serious campaign. You have a serious responsibility in the job. You got something to do that's going to require you to stay in obedience to me. Because you're not going to be able to do this without remaining obedient. And he showed him that valuable lesson through AI. You have got to eliminate the disobedience, because the disobedience that was in Israel, that just got to be in Jericho. The disobedience that was in among the people weakened their ability to fight a lesser enemy. So, where we are right now, y'all, in history, okay, is in our reality. The earth, the world system, the earth is experiencing birth. Luke chapter 20. Let's just take this little journey here real quick, and I'm going to show you something. Hebrew word for taking courage, chazak. Okay? Be strong, be courageous, be strong, be bold, chazak, ba'atmas. Okay? So the world is experiencing birth pain. Look at Luke chapter 21, and let's look at verse number 20. However, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you are to understand that she is about to be destroyed. Those in Yehuda or Judah must escape to the hills. Those inside the city must get out, and those in the country must not enter. For these are the days of vengeance, when everything that has been written in the Tanakh will come true. Everything that has been written in the scriptural text will come true. What a terrible time it will be for pregnant women and nursing mothers. For there, watch this, y'all, for there will be great distress in the land and judgment on the people. Some will fall by the edge of the sword, others will be carried into all the countries of the Gentiles, and Jerusalem will be trampled down by the Gentiles until the age of the Gentiles runs its course. Do y'all see that? That here in the scriptural text, he is telling them, there will appear signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and on earth. Nations will be in anxiety and bewilderment at the sound and surge of the sea, as people faint with fear at the prospect of what is overtaking the world. For the powers in heaven will be shaken. Watch this, y'all. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in the cloud with tremendous power and glory. Listen. When these things start to happen, stand up, hold your heads high, because you are about to be liberated. Okay. Let's look at that. He says, I'm paraphrasing, he says that the world is going to be experiencing a great degree of trauma. Everything that can be going wrong is going to be going wrong. Everything that can be possibly happening that is outside of what the Father, he said everything. He says Jerusalem getting ready to be destroyed. All these different things is going to take place. He says all of this is going to happen. And then he says Jerusalem's going to be trampled down by the Gentiles. And he says all this is going to take place until the time of the Gentiles runs its full course. Everything that is happening in the planet, everything that is happening in the world system, there is a course that it has to run. But here's the thing about a course. A course has a start and a finish. The will and the plan of the Father has no start and finish. It is the will, it is continuous, it is what eternal, what he has already established, what he's already brought forth is going to take place. We listen to me. Where we are at a point and at a place in history is we're at a place and a point in history where we are going to see the reality of things go from bad to worse. Watch this, y'all. Don't take that the wrong way. Okay? Don't take that the wrong way. There is a course. There is a start. There is a finish. But here we are told that when these things start to take place, what are you to do? Hold your head up. Because this is an indicator that you are getting ready to be liberated. I believe your King James Bible uses terminology when you get around to that latter verse that I read. It says, look up for your redemption draweth nigh. In other words, all of these things are indicators that all of the trauma and all of the craziness that is happening, that's going on in the planet and going on in the world, is an indicator that you are closer to your deliverance, that you are closer to your freedom, that you are closer to the liberation. That's what it means. Watch this. The deception of the enemy is to try to make you see it, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, try to make you see it from a different plane and from a different place, that when you see it and you see it getting worse, the enemy is trying to make a lot of us believe that when we see it as it gets worse, oh, it's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. He's trying to convince you that that means it's going to be perpetuated. And the reality is it's not. It's going to run a course, and then that course is going to end. And when that course ends, he says, after you see all these different things, you just got to read. After you see all these things, you see things get the worst that they've ever been. Then we're going to see him appear. We already talked about the fact that everything the enemy established and set up is going to be done away with one breath of his mouth. Everything that the enemy has established and set forth and put forth will be done away with. And in the process of all of this, there are periods and points and moments, okay, as we all look at it. Periods and points and moments as we approach and as we experience the things that we experience, and as we deal with the trauma that we deal with, and as we go through the things that we go through, there are points of discouragement. There are points where there are moments that we experience, that we go through, where the only option seems to be discouragement. But then, the reality is that circumstances have a way of presenting themselves that can put you in a place, depending on how we are seeing what we're seeing, in a place of discouragement. Watch this. It is a human condition to get discouraged. But the reality of the word, we talk about the word be, B-E. When we're talking about be, we're talking about the root word to the word that we know as be, right? B-E-I-N-G. So we're talking about be. Sometimes that terminology that's not bad language. to be, or when you're talking about being, right? We talk about scripture says in Acts, in him we live and move and have our being. In other words, the reality of our existence, the reality of us being here or existing here is a result of him existing. Our existence is rooted in his existence. So there are things, watch, that we experience momentarily that we should never allow to become our state of being. I'm not going to allow discouragement to be my state of mind, to be my, I'm not going to allow myself to exist as discouraged. I'm not going to allow myself that to be the perpetuation, but that to be the continuation. Discouragement, but then there's a solution, there's an answer. So he says, depending on the perspective that you have, when you see these things happening, you either get discouraged or you either are encouraged at the reality that, wait a minute, we've already been told that this was going to happen. We've already been told that this is going to run its course. And since we've been told that this is going to run its course, since we've been told this was going to happen, the same source that told us this was going to happen is the same source that is telling us how it's going to end. So when we see that and we realize that, when we see the stuff happening on the negative side of what this source told us will happen, okay, well, he didn't lie to me about what was going to happen. So that means he's not lying to me about how it's going to end. So when I realize that and understand that, the perspective that I must have then is that this just has to run its course. It is what it is. This must run its course. This is not always, it's not always going to be like this. We listened to a song yesterday, one of my favorite songs by Timothy Wright. The song says, it won't be this way. That the reality is, Timothy Wright used to really kind of write along those kind of lines. He also wrote a song very popular, Trouble Don't Last. Okay, so the reality is that things have a course, right? And what we are seeing, y'all, is we're seeing that mankind is displaying the thrust of his wickedness at an all-time high. Mankind is almost going overboard to try to prove how wicked he can be. Fueled by Satan, he is almost going overboard to try to prove how wicked he can be, how much debauchery he can display, how defiant he can be. Some cases, this can provoke reactions of fear. If you want to talk about real quick, 2 Timothy chapter 3. 2 Timothy chapter 3. Last days. What kind of times come? Perilous times with the King James Bible uses that terminology. In the last days, perilous times. That's what he says. What he says in 2 Timothy chapter number 3. 2 Timothy chapter number 3. Verse number 1. Moreover, understand that in the Akarit Hayamim of last days will come trying times. People will be self-loving, money-loving, proud, arrogant, insulting, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, uncontrolled, brutal, hateful of good, treacherous, headstrong, swollen with conceit, loving pleasure rather than God, as they retain the outer form of religion, but not its power. This is why even people who say that they believe in the Father are supposed to be quote unquote Christian or so on and so forth. This is why even them, are involved in these things, right? Form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. Outer form of religion. So, what we have to do is we have to know that our strength and our reality, or our peace, must rest in the reality that the Father will do what seems good to him. Look at 2 Samuel chapter 10 real quick. Look over there with me. I'm going to show you something. 2 Samuel chapter 10. Samuel chapter number 10. Look at verse number 9. You know what? I encourage you to read the rest of that. But just for sake of time, look at verse number 11. He said, if Aram is too strong for me, you help me. But if the army of Ammon is too strong for you, then I will come and help you. Watch this, y'all. Take courage and let's be strong for the sake of our people and the cities of our God. May Adonai, or may the Most High, do what seems good to him. What he said? He said, may he do what seems good to him. That's what David said. May the Most High do what seems good to him. He said, now, if one is too strong for you, I'll come help you. If another is too strong, I'll come help you. If you see another is too strong for me, you come help me. However, let's be strong for our people, and let's be strong for our families. Let's be strong for our city. He says, but let's rest in the fact that the Father will do what seems good to him. I'm going to tell you something. We already know that what is good to the Father is our good. We know that. Now, here's the thing about good. The thing we must understand and realize about good is that we don't get to define it. We don't get to define it. Whatever the Father has deemed to be good, whatever he has designed or deemed to be, this is the process through which this is going to take place. This is how it is going to happen. This is how it is going to work. We follow suit, whatever the Father has seen to be. Watch this, y'all. That's this word that we use about Yeshua, and we even sing about it. Yeshua is called, he shall be called Wonderful Counselor, right? Hebrew Bible says it like this, that he is a wonder of a counselor. But he's a wonder of a counselor, mighty God, Prince of Peace, Prince of Peace, Prince of Peace, everlasting Father. Let me tell you about that word, Prince of Peace. The word Yeshua, of course, salvation. But the word Prince of Peace, the word Prince is the Hebrew word Sar, S-A-R. Okay? So, and the Hebrew word for peace is the word Shalom. We've already taught, those of my family there in Seattle and all of you, we love y'all. We've been taught over and over and over again. I talk about it quite often. Shalom, by definition in Hebrew, is what destroys chaos, or the power to destroy the authority attached to chaos. In other words, you destroy the source of chaos. So Yeshua, listen to this, y'all. This is so amazing. Yeshua is the Sar Shalom. Yeshua is the Prince of Peace. Now, when I look at the word Sar, or the word Prince, the word Sar is two Hebrew alphabets. And I didn't bring the part. It's two Hebrew alphabets. It is the Sheen, which looks like teeth,
something devouring, which is the same beginning of the word shalom, sheen, what looks like teeth, that which is like destructive, okay? That which is consuming, right? That's why it looks like teeth. What you do, what do you use your teeth to do? Consume stuff, okay? So, sheen, and then resh, which is the man or head, or in some sense, depending on the derivative, means authority. So Yeshua is the Sar Shalom. Yeshua is the prince, the ruler, the governor. So what I found out is Sar Shin Resh, the word picture is consuming man. So Yeshua is the consuming man. In other words, basically the thing that I read is the prince consumes wherever he goes. He takes over. Yeah, right. This is one of the reasons why the terminology that is used for territorial spirits is principalities. Okay, because they are governing in a sense, and in a sense exercising some degree of conquering over that particular territory. He is the Sar. He is the Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace. He is the consuming man, right? Consuming man, one who destroys, one who is the ruler of what destroys the authority that creates chaos. So you have the Sar Shalom, right, which is the consuming man who must reign in us, or you could fall on the other side. Watch this, and I'm gonna get back to the consuming man in just a minute, okay? Because it's so beautiful picture. Or you could change that first alphabet, and you would be what is called Memresh. Mem, okay, is what has to do with the opposite of the destruction of chaos. Memresh is the creator of chaos. What stirs chaos. Now, Sar Shalom, the opposite of Shalom, okay, is this creating Shalom, this chaos man. I talked to you about that some time ago. The chaos man. Bitter is that word. Bitter. Chaos man. Shalom. Peace. Consuming man. Now here's the thing. What I found out is that it is the prince, the consuming man, who creates escape or survival. Sarhe, who creates escape or revival. So survival or escape is defined as the door of the prince. The way you escape is by embracing the nature of, by embracing the Prince of Peace, the Sar Shalom. He gives you the ability to escape. He gives you the ability to overcome. He gives you the ability to survive, because he is fighting against that which is creating chaos. Or your perspective could be flipped, and if your perspective is flipped, then what you end up is you end up with a different response, and that response becomes bitterness, which means you continue to attach yourself to chaos. Watch this, y'all. Do you know how amazing it is that there are so many people who exist on this planet who don't realize that they are the primary source to their own problem? You are the primary source to your own problem. You are the primary source. It's happening. continuation of happening over and over. You, over and over, you become the primary source of your own trauma, your own issue, you become the primary source of it. This is what happens. When the perspective is opposite of what the heart, what the plan, what the will of the Father is, it leads to bitterness, watch, and it opens a different door called rebellion. Because that word for the chaos man and that word for that had to do with bitter has, in other words, or the chaos man, or that word memresh, right? So that word sheen resh, the consuming man, authority, ruler, governing, the one who is actually at work destroying the authority that creates chaos. That's one side. But then there's the memresh, which happens to be one who is continually connected to chaos. And then the Hebrew word indicates, when you talk about rebellion, the word rebellion in Hebrew means the door of the bitter. So I said, do what you got to do. You have to determine which door you're going to walk in. Are we going to walk in the door of the prince, which is escape, which is relief, which is survival? Or are we going to allow ourselves to be pulled into the space and in the place of bitterness, which will bring us to rebellion, which is the door of the bitter, which continually leads you and connects you to you never escape chaos. Watch this. You become a conduit. You become a participant in stirring up the chaos that you keep experiencing. Why is this always happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is it always happening to me? Why is it always happening to who again? Who? Why is it always happening to me? Why is it you? You become the source of your own bitterness. Bitterness attaches you to rebellion. Rebellion breeds chaos. The authority of chaos can never be destroyed as long as bitterness is in our heart. That's the reality. That is the 100% true reality that we must come to understand. I can't remember verbatim what it was that I posted. I want to say it was yesterday. Might have been on Facebook, but it was something along the lines of saying, basically, family. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. This is one of the interesting things about unforgiveness, bitterness, and all those different things like that, or keeping grudges, is that people always unwittingly wear those things like clothes. You always unwittingly wear it. And discerning, when you're looking at discernment always reveals the existence of several things, but discernment will always reveal where there is some resentment, unforgiveness, discernment will always reveal it. Always reveal it. And what I've learned is, and I learned this a lot of times, if you notice, like a lot of times older people, sometimes older people, not some of them, they're going to be outspoken, they're going to say what they have to say. But your vast majority of older people are often not as verbal. They are when they need to be. But what I've learned is I've learned that a lot of times people who are very discerning, a lot of times are not as really observant people, because they're surveying what is happening, what is going on, and they're seeing things, and that perception of them perceiving those things, they're seeing what's happening. It says that, and sometimes they'll be silent about it. Okay, and in the middle of them being silent, sometimes people think, that I don't know why people think that. Sometimes people think that silence is associated with being naive. Because I don't say anything, I don't know anything. That's deception. That's deceptive on your own part. But what happens is that the analogy that the Father had given me, and I've been put in the post, is that unforgiveness and all those kind of different things like that, is that it's like a soiled, worn out, smelly, dirty outfit. And it says that for the most part, what we have to do is realize that what is irritating us is really the stench and discomfort of that garment of unforgiveness that we continue to wear. It's not even the person you can't forgive that's irritating you. It is the stench and the discomfort of that worn, soiled, stinking garment of unforgiveness that you refuse to take off. That's what's irritating. Because when you're not in that presence, you're still wearing that garment. You still stink. And you had it on too long, and you've seen people sometimes, but they've been wearing something too long, you can almost get mad to them, you're uncomfortable. And it's smelly and it's irritating you. So unforgiveness is like you're continually wearing a garment that at any point you can take it off, bathe yourself, refresh yourself, put on something different, but you continually keep choosing to wear that garment. And guess what? The longer you wear the garment, the more stinky it's going to be, the more uncomfortable you are. That's what the reality of unforgiveness is. It is what it is. Okay? And so we have to come to the place where we don't allow ourselves to go into bitterness, because what we become is we become the personification of the chaos man who is continually being connected to and consumed by bitterness. Continually connected to and consumed by chaos. But if we would move into the reality of the Sar Shalom, Yeshua, the Sar Shalom, Prince of Peace, move into that, then we would actually see ourselves escaping, surviving chaos. So here's the reality. Do I want to embrace the reality of the nature of Yeshua, who is the Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace, and find myself surviving and escaping chaos? Or do I want to follow the nature of the chaos man and the bitter and find myself constantly submitting to and experiencing chaos? Got a choice. Okay. So, what the Father did in his ability, and I'm coming to what the Father did in his ability was he gave each of us the ability to encourage. And if you remember some time ago when I talked about encouragement, as I mentioned earlier, to encourage means to repair. That's exactly what it means. Now, check this out. Check this out. Remember I said that the word bold, strong, courage, or encourage, that the word strong or the word bold has to do with the word, or the Hebrew word is kazak, right? So check this out. The other definition that I discovered about the word encourage, and I wrote it down. The other definition was encourage or encouragement means what follows the vision. Now, not sorry, So it intrigued me. And I took a little dive, took a little look into that. And what I found, it just was like, wow, that's okay, that's it. Okay. So encourage or to be encouraged, encouragement is what follows the vision. And guess what I found out about the word vision in Hebrew? Okay. The word encourage and the word encouragement in Hebrew is what we just said, chazak. And when he made that statement about taking courage, he said chazak ba'amat. Okay. When he said that, I found out that the word vision in Hebrew is spelled like this. Chachach. So encouragement or encourage is the word chazak. Okay, K on the end. The word vision in the Hebrew is the word chazak. That's the K sound. You know what that's telling me? That's telling me they come from the same root. And when you find that in the Hebrew language, you find when you follow that trail, it leads you to something wonderful every single time. So check this out. The Hebrew alphabet, or I wish I would have the cards so you can see the picture, is the Het, Zayin, Hey. Watch this, y'all. Check this out. The word to have vision or to see in Hebrew means this: when the barrier is broken. When the barrier is broken. Turn to 1 Kings, chapter number 6. I'm going to show you this. 1 Kings, chapter number 6. Verse number 15. Second chapter number 6. Yeah. Second chapter number 6. Look at verse number 14. 2 Kings chapter number 6, verse 14. Now, remember, let's review just a moment. The word encourage or encouragement in Hebrew, chazak. The word vision in Hebrew, chazak. Chet zayin hey. The defining means when the barrier is cut. I said broken. When the barrier is cut. Look at verse number 14. It's in 2 Kings chapter 6. So he sent horses, chariots, and a large army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. Verse 15, the servant of the man of God got up early in the morning. On going outside, he saw an army with horses and chariots. What did he see? An army with horses and chariots surrounding the city. His servant said to him, "Oh, my master, this is terrible. What are we going to do?" He answered, "Don't be afraid. Those who are with us outnumber those that are with them." Now, look at this moment. At the moment, it was only Elijah and the servant. And Elisha said to the servant, when the servant saw all the surrounding army that had come to surround them and come against them, he said, "What are we going to do, Elijah? We're surrounded. We were surrounded by armies and horses and chariots. What are we supposed to do? Well, look at this. Look at verse. Look at the next verse. He says, then Elisha prayed, Adonai, I ask you, to open his eyes. So, now wait a minute. Pause for just a moment. Where did we read in the scripture text that the servant was blind? Apparently, he wasn't blind because he saw all those armies. He saw the armies and the horses and the chariot surrounding them. So we are outnumbered. What we gonna do? So he wasn't blind. The prophet then said, Father, open his eyes so that he can see. Then Adonai opened the young man's eyes. Wait a minute, but he wasn't blind. What do you mean he opened his eyes? Y'all, guess what? This is one thing that really just helped me to really see, because sometimes even the way we approach it, even the way we present vision, we approach and we present vision even in the same manner that the world system promotes and brings out vision. You know, and so when we look at the book of Proverbs, Proverbs chapter 29 says what? Where there is no vision, the people perish. But we have to understand that that word vision doesn't have anything to do with corrective lenses like these or a natural seeing of the eyes. Matter of fact, one of the things we understand about the nature of Yeshua is that it was prophesied to him that he would not judge by the hearing of his ears or the seeing of his eyes. A principle that is important for us to realize how important it is for us to follow. But then he says he opened his eyes and he saw, watch this, there before him all around Elijah, the mountains were covered with horses and fiery chariots. When they came down to him, Elijah prayed to Adonai, please strike these people blind, and he struck them blind as Elijah had asked. Next, Elijah told them, you've lost your way, and this isn't even the right city. Follow me, I'll take you to the man you're looking for. Then he led them to Shamron. On their arrival to Shamron, Elijah said, Adonai, open the eyes of these men so that they can see. Adonai opened their eyes, and they saw that they were in the middle of Shamron. So we'll read on what happened. But here's the reality. The reality is that in one sense, he caused this boy's eyes to open so that he can see. What does vision mean? When the barrier is cut, when you can see beyond what you see with these eyes, when you can see beyond your own limited human perspective, your own limited human reality, your own limited human viewpoint, when you can see beyond that, and the Father can open your eyes, watch, through a prophetic utterance. So you begin to see that vision as the Father has designed, or what he was talking about when there was no vision of people. He's not talking about some dream that somebody came up with on their own. He's not talking about something that you develop out of your own heart and out of your own mind. He is talking about something that has come as a result of a prophetic utterance that changes your perspective, that causes you to actually be able to see. Because guess what? Without the people perish. And guess what? I found the word perish. We think the word perish just means to die. But when I looked at the word perish means that without there being a prophetic utterance, which is giving the guys a direction that causes the barrier to be cut so you can perceive and see what the Father wants you to see. That boy was scared. See, he says, it's more them than it is us. And Elisha said, no, bro. There is more with us than there are with them. And he said, Father, open his eyes so he can see. Two people, same situation. One had the perspective of what he saw with his natural eyes. The other one knew. The prophet knew and could see and realize, no, we're not surrounded. We're outnumbered. There's more with us than there are with them. Father, open his eyes so he can see what I see. Open his eyes so he can see. And the Father opened his eyes and he began to see the mountain covered with fiery chariots. You know what that was? That's for angels. Ready to go to their defense. Okay? Those soldiers would have attacked them. They would have known what hit them. Because the reality was that all those armies were completely outnumbered. There were legions of people that were there, present at the moment, ready to defend the man of God and the servant. But the servant couldn't see until the Father allowed the barrier to be cut. After prophetic utterance that came forth, the barrier, after the prayer had gone forth, the barrier was cut, and he could see, and he could perceive and see a greater reality than what he was looking at with his own eyes. Because in that situation, if all he would have, see what happened, he saw that they were surrounded, and guess what happened? His immediate response, his immediate reaction was, what are we going to do with a tough situation? Life is going to work out for us. Watch this. Perish means to become unrestrained, to become uncovered, to become exposed. So without the vision, chazah, the people become unrestrained. What does unrestrained mean? Rebellious, bitter. So there has to be vision, because guess what happens when there is a clearer vision and the barrier is cut and you can see who is with you, then that brings you to a place where you can have the confidence, not in yourself and your own ability, but the confidence to know who is with you in the midst of whatever it is you are experiencing. So what am I saying to you, beloved? I'm saying that the Father birthed it in my heart and put it in my heart to say to you that it becomes important that you realize how essential it is that you make the quality decision to be encouraged. That you make the quality decision not to allow the negative circumstance to become the seat or the basis of your reality. That you make the decision that I may have experienced a moment and a place or the limb of the curve because of what I see, what's happening is going on. But when the Father can allow vision, the barrier to be cut, for you to see beyond what you see, then there is a strengthening, there is an encouragement, and then the Father has given us a family that we gather with and assemble with that helps us to repair. The Father repairs us, and then he gives us the ability to have the confidence, to have the assurance, to have the blessed assurance, right? That this becomes the reality of how important it is that we realize that we cannot allow ourselves to be despondent, right? That we cannot allow ourselves to be in despair. What did Yeshua say to his disciples, to his followers? He says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in the Father, believe also in me. In my Father, I go to prepare my Father's house. Many mentions it. When I so, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may be also. That there are moments and times, absolutely, where there's the experience of discouragement. Discouragement may hit me momentarily, but I have greater insight. I have the ability to see beyond what I see, which gives me the ability to be encouraged and fall into the reality of the Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace, versus falling into the Memresh, the chaos, man, and descend into bitterness and rebellion. Martin Luther King said something in that it was a natural thing that he was saying, a natural thought process of what he was saying when they were questioning him about riots and all the different things, whatever that was going on. And when all these riots and stuff were going on, Michael Stokely and all these people and all these riots and stuff like they were going on, and they were questioning him about it, whether or not basically trying to see if he still had the effectiveness as a leader of the civil rights movement. And so, you know, as they were doing this line of questioning, they asked Martin Luther King a question in an interview. Martin Luther King said this, that riot is the language of the unheard. In other words, they feel the only way that they can be heard is to tear up some stuff and to revolt and to riot in that manner. When I heard that, I thought, I see what that is. But when you realize that the rise language of the unheard, then you realize for us, we never go unheard. Because we talk to the Father, we pray according to His will, according to what we said. We know this is the confidence. Look at that. This is the confidence that we have in Him. That if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And we know that if He hears us, we have a petition that we desire. So the reality is that I never have to resort to perishing, right? Because to perish means to become unrestrained. To perish means to become exposed. To perish means to become naked. To perish means to become unrestricted, uncovered. I never have to uncover, expose. I never have to become unrestrained because I have become discouraged. One of the reasons why He told me, "That's what I mean with you." Then He tells us, you know, I'll never leave the disciples. Come say to the disciples, I'll never leave you up the same. Even Yeshua said, make statements about the Father, why do you say it? If the reality is, y'all, is that we must understand and realize that our state of being has to come from the deep intrinsic connection that we have in our relationship with the Father, where although we may experience moments that bring us discouragement, we may experience moments that bring us frustration, we may experience moments that put us in a negative space or a negative, we may experience those things, but we have the ability to overcome. We have the ability to live in a reality of overcoming those things. And it comes in through and by us coming to the place where we are able to make the quality decision because it has been made available to us that we're not going to be discouraged, that what we're going to be is encouraged. What we're going to be is prepared, and what we're going to be is those, because the other definition again of encouraged or encouragement or courageous is what follows the vision. The vision is when the barrier is cut so that I may see. That is what is guiding, that is what is governing. So we find this principle in Yeshua when it says, looking to Yeshua, who is the author and the finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured execution state, and although he was despised. So here is the reality for us. The reality for us in the heart of what I am 100% certain that the Father is speaking to us in this moment is that in spite of what is happening, in spite of what is going on, in spite of what we see, in spite of what is happening around us, we have to make quality decisions Father, thank you so much for your word. Thank you that your word takes root in us and produces fruit in us. We appreciate you for all things. We glorify you, we honor you, and we love you with the love of our Father. Thank you now, Father, that you bless us and keep us, that you make your face to shine upon us, your gracious upon your people, and you bless us. We go with your care and your comfort in Yeshua's name. Beloved family, is so good. Grateful to the Father that you all have been able to join us and be a part and share with us in our time of the Word. I always pray that something has been shared, that something has been given, that is benefiting you in the greatest ways. We appreciate the Father for you, and we're thankful for the Father of you joining us every single time that you have that opportunity. We love you so much. We're praying for you. We want you to pray for us, that we will continually see the will and the heart and the plan and purpose of our Father come to pass in our lives. Bid you his shalom. We'll see you the next time.